Hi everyone. Uh, I'm Alan Woy, and it is pretty hot here in Rochester, New York. We've just finished our heat wave, thank goodness. Sorry to hear that things in Ohio are still burning up. I am retired. I taught at the Crane School of Music for nearly 40 years. I taught studio clarinet there, and I directed band. When I retired, my wife and I moved to Rochester, and I had been there for not quite a year when I started working with the New Horizons adult music program. First, I started with the clarinet choir, and then I got very much involved with the band program there. And if you're not sure what New Horizons is, it is a music program for senior citizens 50 and over. Um, and it's a very dynamic program. It's a worldwide program. There are well over 300 chapters worldwide. So it's a huge program, and is keeping a lot of senior citizens very, very stimulated and active and involved musically. So that's a little bit about me, and but I want to talk about the clarinet today, and it's something that has excited me for well over 60 years, and so I'm happy to share it with you. The keys to success on clarinet is the title of our session today, and this specifically has to do with the BAME system. That's the system that we all play, and it has a very, very interesting history. And I'm going to read an article that I wrote about this. The reason I'm going to read it is because it'll take less time. And so this is about where the clarinet came from, when it started around 1690, and it's a history that goes to 1843 when the BAME system was introduced. So here we go. The clarinet did not magically appear in its current form. If you played the Mozart Clarinet Concerto in Mozart's time, you did it with only 5 keys. If you played Carl Maria von Weber's Concertino, or one of his 2 concertos for clarinet, you did it with a 10 key, or possibly a 13 key clarinet. Most of us around the world, but not all, use the BAME system clarinet to play everything, including woodwind quintet, band, orchestra, chamber music, and the wealth of our clarinet solo literature. Today we'll be talking about how we arrived at the BAME system that was first patented in 1843, and about how we can best use it to improve our clarinet playing. The clarinet first appeared around 1690 as a very crude 2-key clarinet made by Johann Christian Denner, a German, when he accidentally placed a single reed and a register key plus a throat tone A key on a recorder with a cylindrical bore, thus doubling its range. Not long afterwards, his son Joseph extended his father's invention, designing a 5-key clarinet. The five-key clarinet increased in popularity during the 18th century, culminating in 1791 when Mozart wrote his famous clarinet concerto to go along with his already composed clarinet quintet for clarinet and string quartet and his trio for clarinet, viola, and piano, and began adding the clarinet in the woodwind sections in his symphonies and operas. By the close of the 18th century, the clarinet was very well on its way to becoming a valuable member of the woodwind family. The first half of the 19th century was to see remarkable development in the clarinet's mechanism as well as the clarinet's overall popularity. Early in the 1800s, Ivan Müller, another German, developed the 10-key clarinet and very soon after the 13-key clarinet. The 10-key clarinet, according to Geoffrey Rendall, was Heinrich Behrmann's instrument of choice when Carl Maria von Weber wrote his concertino and two clarinet concertos, all in the year 1811. Heinrich Behrmann was considered the greatest clarinet soloist of his time. Very soon after the 13-key clarinet, the 15-key clarinet, also known as the Albert system, was designed by Eugene Albert. It was nicknamed the simple system by simply adding two keys onto Müller's 13-key design. It did gain some popularity, but was eventually replaced by the German Ehler system, a modern version of the Müller 13-key design, and the modern French Bame system. Hyacinth Eleanor Closet, recently appointed clarinet professor at the Paris Conservatory, and Auguste Buffet, a master clarinet technician, collaborated at great length and in 1843 introduced the patent for the Bame system. Their design followed the mechanical and acoustical principles that Theobald Bame had applied to designing flutes. Theobald Bame was a very noteworthy flute performer, a wonderful soloist, and also an inventor. He invented the Bame flute system, also highly influenced the modern mechanism for the oboe. Their design followed the mechanical and acoustical principles that Theobald Bame had applied to designing flutes. Those principles were the accurate acoustical placement of tone holes and devising a mechanism to open and close all of those tone holes. Thusly, our modern Bame system clarinet has 24 tone holes, 17 keys, and 6 rings. It would be almost 150 years between the clarinet's first appearance in 1690 and the patent in 1843 of the French Bame system. It would be another 75 years before the Bame system would come into common use worldwide. We use the Bame system almost exclusively in North America, but were you to travel to Germany or Austria and attend a concert, you might notice that their clarinetists predominantly use the Ehler system, which is the modern extension of the Müller 13-key clarinet and the 15-key clarinet designed by Albert. Other key systems have been introduced over time, but so far none have gained any great popularity. Since we all use the Bame system exclusively here, I want to identify all the keys, their peculiarities, and how we might deal with some of the issues that are part of the compromises made when the key system was developed and designed. Much of what Closet and Buffet did the 2 years prior to their patent in 1843 was to devise a key system that would cover all 24 acoustically placed tone holes, be accessible and efficient for proper hand position and finger motion, and improve fingering issues in previous clarinet key systems. Certainly a daunting task given 19th century technology. So, this is made out of boxwood. This is a B-flat clarinet, and it is the Müller 13-key clarinet. You can see, I hope you can see anyway. Let me see, get this. You have your F low, E and F sharp key over here. You have your F key here, G sharp key here, C sharp key here, a couple of ring keys here, 2 side trill keys, the G sharp key here, A key, and of course the register key in back. And if we compare this to a BAME system, how am I doing this? It looks pretty minimal. Okay? This is the Albert system, the 15-key clarinet. And one of the things that we see here, we see the E and the F sharp key with rollers. And we see the G sharp key and the F key here with rollers moving back and forth. There are really no alternate fingering options here to speak of. We have ring key here, but notice here we have the rings. These are called Brill keys, and this was to be something that BAME was going to really take advantage of. One thing I might show you here is notice on the 13 key there's no bridge key. Notice on the Albert system there is no bridge key. Okay, so the upper joint is in no way connected with the lower joint. And here is a modern Ehler system. You'll notice that this is truly an extension of the 15-key clarinet by virtue of these rollers here. The options for alternate fingerings are not on the Ehler system that are on the BAME system. And notice too that the Brill system, in other words, these rings here, are almost identical on the 15-key and the Ehler system. Another thing that I find very interesting about the Ehler system is there is no bridge key. Okay? So this is truly totally in line with the 2-key, 3-key, 5-key, 10-key, 13-key, 15-key. In other words, the German evolution of the clarinet. The BAME system is truly a French contribution to this, to the clarinet's evolution. Okay. I do have pictures of the 2-key, the 3-key, and the 5-key if you're interested, and maybe we can do that a little bit later. Where I want to go now is to specifically talk about the BAME system. And the BAME system's peculiarities. It's very different from the other woodwind instruments, and that's part of its success. It has become an indispensable woodwind instrument. It's a standard member of the orchestra. You couldn't have a wind band without a clarinet section. You can't have a woodwind quintet without a clarinet. Couple of peculiarities. The flute, the oboe, and the bassoon all overblow at the octave. The clarinet overblows at the 12th. And that's because it has a single beating reed, a register key, and it has a cylindrical bore. And this is the acoustical setup for an instrument that is going to respond to odd numbered overtones, which is why the clarinet has the immediately recognizable tone that it has. The clarinet is set up technically in sort of in halves. It has a lower half and it has an upper half. We play from low E up to F. Okay? Then we have the throat tones. And going from low E up to that F is just sequential fingerings. They're very even, they're very simple. But when we get to the throat tones, it's like we hit a speed bump in the road. The keys are fingered in a very odd way. The tone quality of these notes in the throat tone range is not nearly as good as the low range or the upper range that is immediately above it. And that's because of there's very little tube here to work with to get all those notes in. And there's just not enough tube to support the tone quality that the other notes have. So here is that lower half again. And then, starting on F sharp, we go to the throat tones. Then we get to the long B, which is a 12th higher than the low E. So the whole finger system starts over again. Okay? So what this creates is we have the throat tones, which are fingered in a very odd way. And I'll get to that in a minute. But it also creates what we call the break. Okay? And the break is going from the throat tones on into, the break occurs from throat tone A to a long B. Or it could be from B flat to okay? And basically the break is kind of like the pillar that's in the middle of your basement. It doesn't take up any room at all, but it's basically in the way of everything. Okay? And the break is in the middle of everything on the clarinet. So it's for every single scale we play, the break is somewhere in the middle of it. So we're constantly going back and forth over the break, and it is something that we clarinet players have to deal with. So the thing we need to do is we need to really deal with the register key. And the register key is a little bit complicated by the fact that we also have to cover the tone hole in the back with our thumb. So if we cover the tone hole with the meaty part, the fat part of our thumb, and we use the upper left-hand corner of our thumb to manipulate the register key, that would be the best way to do it. And it helps if the thumb is angled. It has a 45-degree angle this way. We can achieve that very nicely by angling our fingers in front up. So we have 45-degree angle here, and this also gets our little finger in position for the C sharp key and for these 3 foot keys. So this left hand position is really quite crucial. Also, the left index finger now is in a perfect position to take care of on the second knuckle of the side of your index finger to take care of the G sharp key. We don't play it like this. It's on the side of the second knuckle. And then we play the A key with the first knuckle on the side. I would have really loved to been in the room, a fly on the wall, to listen to Closet and Buffet solve this problem. But I wasn't, of course. I'm not that old. Okay, so that's the best way to take care of the register key, and it's a key that I find as a teacher that very few of my students have really reckoned with much. They don't think about it much. But I think it should be. I think being flexible between the ranges, making register shifts, is something that is very important. And I would suggest that we play 12ths. Every time we practice, when we play, preferably daily, play some of those. And then I would very highly suggest playing some octaves. Because this is not as simple on the clarinet as it is on the oboe or the bassoon or the flute or the saxophone, because their instruments are set up to overblow at the octave. So the fingering for the low note is the same for the fingering an octave higher. Okay? But for a clarinetist, for us to play octaves, we play a low C, which is this fingering, and the octave above it, which is this fingering. So we now have to use two fingerings for the same note in two different octaves. Okay? That little flexibility exercise would be a very good exercise to do a little bit of every single day. Okay, getting back to throat tones. The throat tones are a very problematic notes, and there are 5 of them, starting on F sharp, and a lot of mechanical and acoustical compromises had to be made for these keys. You'll notice that the keys are shaped kind of funny. They also have tone holes. They open tone holes that are different sizes. They're generally smaller. Okay? And while they are very well located, they're not absolutely precise. So almost every throat tone needs to be enhanced. And we can enhance it. We can go a long way to making throat tones sound better if we will play them out. This is one of the difficulties. Remember, I told you that half of my my faculty load when I was teaching was directing band, and it became very apparent to me that special attention needed to be attended to the clarinet section, and second clarinets were probably one of the parts that was the hardest to get out. And since composers write second clarinet parts and third clarinet parts, we have to conclude that they're important. So I was usually on my second clarinet players and my third clarinet players to play out. So good tone quality is essential. We have to have the tone has to be balanced. The lower range is very full, it's very robust, it's very rich. The range immediately above it, which is the clarion range, is probably the most beautiful range on the clarinet. And then you've got the throat tones in the middle of it. And they don't sound all that great unless we play them out. We got to get our embouchures to be sort of extra embouchures when we're in the throat tone range to get those notes to have some clarity. And by that I mean the edges on them are going to, if we don't do anything about them, they're going to be fuzzy. They're going to be, if we were looking at a slide on a screen from a projector, the image would look unfocused, be fuzzy. And that's the same thing with fuzzy sound. The edges of the sound are not very visible. So I'm getting my embouchure to come in, get my chin. Anytime you bring your embouchure in like that, it's going to force your chin in just the right position. Okay? So we want this here, and also we want to get the middle of our tongue to form an E vowel. Every note we play on the clarinet has to have some form of an E vowel, because that's where we are placing our pitch center. And then we have to give the note some depth. So we're always talking about opening our throat, opening our throat. And we have to be careful here not to open down our throat.
We don't want to sound like this.
Okay? Some of you are laughing. Okay? And that's exactly the way the clarinet would sound. You know, it's like you're swallowing the sound. So the way I like to think of the inside, our oral cavity, is like a theater. The mezzanine, which is kind of our middle balcony, is going to be where we focus our tongue's E vowel. It's the balcony that's just above that, but it's sort of in the back of our mouth, not down our throat, okay? So that up here we have our balcony, which is going to give us that nice depth and richness in our sound. In the middle, we've got our tongue placing the E vowel. It's all relatively natural. If we do this and we get our cheekbones up. I'm always on my students when I don't see their cheekbones up. Okay? So we're opening here. This is the balcony. This is where our tongue is forming the pitch center. And then here is where we're controlling the focused airflow, because we got to get that air to hit the reed. Now, so can you hear the B flat being different? Let me do it again. Can you hear it? Raise your hand if you can. Great. Okay. What I did there is I used what's known as a long fingering. And it's especially helpful for throat tones. And there is, let me see if I can change this a little bit so you can see my hands. The B flat is, we call it, it's the pinch B flat. Okay? Then I'm adding these two keys right here. Okay, the third and fourth finger here. I'm also adding these two keys, and if I need to, I can add the C key, or the C key, okay, or the F key, whatever, the FC key, okay. But you could add all of these. You could go 2, you could go 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, F. Okay, so this is an enhanced fingering. We're using the mechanism to enhance a throat tone, especially the B flat. And does anyone know why the B flat sounds so terrible? Okay, here's why. It's the pinch B flat. We close the A key and the B flat key. When you open up when you press the A key, you're opening these two tone holes. And when you open the register key, you're opening this tone hole way up here. So you've got from here down to here, you've got 2 inches of tube. Also, this is a 9mm pad. This is a 2mm speaker hole. Those tone holes are remarkably different, and they're spread out through a very, very short amount of tube. So the B flat, the pitch of it is happening somewhere in the tube right in here. And that's why it's vague. That's why it's very, very, it just isn't a fully formed pitch. So we use a long fingering, and these 2 fingers here in your left hand, the 3rd and 4th fingers right here, are going to make the biggest difference in the long fingering for your B flat because they're the closest. These 2 down here, they're going to help if you need more. You can add this if you need more, and you can add this if you need more. So long fingerings is a way that we can manipulate the clarinet. Pitch. Boy, pitch is an amazing issue in the throat tones, and it's my suggestion that you work with a tuner. One thing you can do with the tuner is you can take your mouthpiece and barrel. Take the mouthpiece and the barrel off, and play into your tuner, play an F sharp. Play this until you get an F sharp. Watch this. This is like walking on a tightrope. This is just the mouthpiece and the barrel. It's very, very raw sound. And that F sharp is not so easy to control. But it's a good way for you to find out sort of where your pitch is really located. It's very graphic. If you're biting a lot, you'll spike the arrow of the tuner. You'll flatline it. If you're too loose, you'll flatline it the other way. But get it in between. But when you're doing it, make sure that you got your embouchure mechanics. You know, you got your whole concert hall in your mouth focused. You've got your E vowel going, you've got the balcony nice and open, and you've got your corners in, chin down, got all your mechanics going. And that will give you a pretty good idea. Then you put it back on your horn. Play it the same way, and your intonation will be, I think, probably if you do this over a period of a week or 2 every day, just double check mechanics. And I'm looking at the clock. That's why I'm a little distracted at the moment, because I really would like to open up for some questions.
Yeah, we had some questions in there. And first, I want to give you a chance, Al, to kind of explain your plateau key clarinet, because some people had questions about that. I don't think you mentioned it, but I shared a link from Wolf and Pfeiffer, who do key adaptations, and just tell everybody a little bit about why you use that instrument and what it does for you specifically.
Okay, I'll be happy to do that. Um, you probably notice that my horn has fully uh, plateau key in the back, on the thumb, and in the front. The reason I had to do this is because I have arthritis. You know, I've been playing the clarinet for 65 years, and that has taken a toll on my hands. Uh, and I want to keep playing. It got to the point for me that I could not play my clarinet because my index fingers are both they both are bending, they're disfigured. My little finger here has already started, and for a while I couldn't do this, could not do this. But now I can because I'm taking supplements, and I've designed a warm up for my clarinet playing that involves every single key on the clarinet. So I'm doing alternate fingerings. Every finger I can think of is part of my warm up. I want to keep playing. Next month I'll be 80, and I want to keep playing as long as I can. So, one of the women in my clarinet choir had contacted Loaf and Pfeiffer and had her clarinet done with a full plateau system. And I got kind of interested in it, and I investigated it, and I went ahead and did it. Loaf and Pfeiffer did a fantastic job. They do this worldwide. They can retrofit any clarinet made with plateau keys. They can arrange plateau keys in any way you want to. If you have only two fingers that need that help, they can just add two or one. They can also make key extensions if you happen to be an amputee, which I think is pretty amazing. Whenever I go to a clarinet conference, I make it a point to stop off and see Wolfgang and have him re-regulate my horn. Mainly I do that just so that I can have a half an hour that I can talk to him. But he's very generous with his time, and I can say that the materials are absolutely professional. These keys feel just as solid as any other mechanism, and it saved me. I'm playing now, I'm doing whatever playing I want to, and my playing is not in any way compromised. Doesn't compromise pitch, doesn't compromise technique or anything, or tone quality, nothing. It gives me a chance to play. Okay, and I'm grateful. Now, Loaf and Pfeiffer, Loaf and Pfeiffer, Loeff, Loaf and Pfeiffer, Pfeiffer. It's Dutch. That's why I don't know how to spell it. But there are two other companies that would be worth. I should tell you that this job, having it retrofitted, would be $2,000. Okay? Much better than buying a new clarinet. Okay, but RZ, the RZ Clarinet Company, also makes a plateau system clarinet. This is the way it comes. It's a plateau system clarinet, RZ clarinet. And it's called the RZ Dolce. Okay? This would be along the line of a student line clarinet. Okay? They, not yet anyway, are they making these clarinets for intermediate or professionals. Okay? I've talked to them about it, but they're just not quite ready to jump yet. The other company that really is starting to, and they've been involved in this almost as long as Loaf and Pfeiffer have, is the F. Arthur Hubel Clarinet Company. Both these companies are good companies. And they make the Superior Plateau. And this, I would characterize this as being a more of an intermediate model for an intermediate player. They are not, to my knowledge anyway, making a professional model clarinet with plateaus. But Loaf and Pfeiffer, when you get it, it's a professional horn. I have playing commitments. I play in a clarinet quartet that's been together now for 15 years, and I play in a music educator band, which is a very hot band. There are lots of young people, young teachers in there, and it's everything I can do to keep up with them. Boy, they are good. So, highly recommend Loaf and Pfeiffer, Hubel, and RZ to look
Cameron
into
also
that.
just mentioned too, Clarinets by Copeland has a model as
Oh,
well.
I
Um,
didn't know about that.
Yeah, so I shared the link for all of those brands in the chat there. If you're interested in checking them out, or if you have a loved one that plays the clarinet that might need some assistance, it also is really good for young players. I know some students, there's a concept of starting a young player on an E flat clarinet or one of the kinder clarinets because it's, sometimes the hands are a bit slower to evolve in size. So, or people who just have small hands. Um, and speaking of that, Al, I saw some questions about added keys in newer models of clarinet. So I think specifically the resonance E flat key on instruments and also the alternate E flat key for the middle register as well. So do you have some thoughts on how to incorporate those keys when they end up on your instrument? Have you had any experience with that? I have
None.
an older Prestige A, and it has one of those little tiny E flat keys, and I don't use it at all. I do sliding when I have to because it just doesn't feel practical. But in more modern instruments, they made that a full-size key. So just curious your thoughts on that.
I really have. I'm a very old school player. I'm playing on a plain BAME with no bells and whistles, and so I really am not sure I could share any practical insights on that. Sorry.
That's all right. I'm just curious your thoughts on it. I do know that the resonance key was added for that low E
Hmm.
in an effort to sort of help with the intonation. So, on most instruments, it is a bit out of tune. But every instrument has their issues. My B flat has a very flat thumb F for some reason. So I have to use a resonance key in order to bring
Ah.
that pitch up on that all of the time. Of course, when I bought that instrument, I was very ignorant about what I needed to do to trial instruments and test it. So I ended
Mm.
up with an instrument that has some pitch
Yes.
inconsistencies beyond what a normal clarinet would have. So I do encourage you when you are trying instruments to take a long period of time and tune with a friend. We have a resource that I'm going to put up on the website that is a tuning buddy sheet where you can take a tuner and you set it on a stand with a friend and you can learn the pitch tendencies of your instrument without looking at a tuner, because our tendency seeing a tuner is to fix the problem using lip or to pull out or push in. But realistically, you need to find where your pitch is in tune on your long tuning note or your throat G, and then play every note just the way that you would normally play it. And then you can see the overall pitch tendencies of your instrument, which would be really helpful for you when you're in a band or an orchestra or playing in chamber music specifically, to know, oh, if I have to play with this flute player, I know that this note on my specific clarinet is really, really out of tune. So I need to adjust accordingly for that. And it'll help you also avoid making overcompensating with your embouchure in certain situations, because that can lead to bad habits like biting or, bad tongue position in some cases. So I also wanted to ask you, Al, about sliding. And I saw someone else mention that in the chat. Um, do you have any recommendations on how you approach when you slide, where you slide, if you're more comfortable sliding um, on the right side versus the left? Just
Oh,
curious how you practice that. I know there's some really great um, finger exercises that are in some of the older books that encourage pinky mobility and helping you. Avadi Makam is a really great book that I use a lot for pinky
mhm.
practice. And I recently had a pretty severe pinky injury, so I've been rehabbing that. I didn't break anything or tear anything, but I have a really severe scar now. And my pinkies are really short compared to my forefinger, so I've always struggled with my pinkies anyway. So it's been really, yeah, we were just talking about this before we started the session.
Comparing
So
pinkies.
yeah, so it's something that I have to work on constantly because my pinkies will lock up from trying to be too tight or trying to push, and now it's even more of an issue for me, unfortunately. So what do you recommend for pinky practice and sliding practice?
Well, I do have some thoughts on this. Um, the um, the BAME system's not perfect, and the alternate system of our foot keys is really not complete. And the reason it isn't complete is because we have only one way to play, say, low G sharp, okay? Or this would be an E flat, a 12th above, okay? So all our alternate fingerings relative to foot keys have to do with this key. We play around this key. If we arrive at this key, we we have to go left. Okay? We have to. Or if we're arriving from one of these foot keys, left or right, and we arrive here, then we have to go left. So the thing about sliding is, the first thing we can't do is we can't slide up. Okay? We can't go up. We can only go down. So E flat to C sharp could be done like that. We can slide to the side. If you're going over here, F sharp, say you're going F sharp to C. F sharp to C. Okay? So you can slide down or you can slide across. And the best way to get into this is to get some etudes that have a lot of sharps or a lot of flats. The sliding is the product of getting into some very heavyweight keys that are going to draw you into. Even the rose etudes, there are some rose etudes that you just hit a dead end and you have to figure out some kind of a slide to get through. So that's, and it takes practice because your finger can get stuck on the upper key and then it comes off sooner than you want it to, and it's like stepping off a curb when you're not expecting it.
There's a couple
So,
things too with it. Like if your fingernails are too long, you can
oh
actually
dear.
get caught on the key and get stuck. And then I had a teacher who suggested grabbing some of the
Oh,
the
absolutely. Yeah, this is the thing.
we'll
Yeah.
call it um moisture,
Nose grease.
moisture grease, whatever you want
Yes,
to call it, and use
nose
that
grease.
in specific places. So yeah. Cool. Anybody else have questions for Al about mechanics or any question really? Al is such a great resource. So feel free to unmute yourself. Let me fix the setting here. You can unmute yourself and ask a question, or you can type it in the chat.
While you're thinking, if any of you are thinking of a question that I really wanted to mention, and that was one of the reasons that technique breaks down is because we lose contact with the keys. And so finger contact has a lot to do. Air and finger contact need to be thought of as a partnership. So, and I'm going to adjust this so that you can see my foot keys, is when you go from one note to another note, you have to make a change. And if you're going from one key to another key, you have to coordinate that so there's no sort of bada note, bada in between the connection. All right? And one way that you can really practice, sort of get the feel for this, is to use, let's just say we're going to use both our low E key. Okay? I've got my right E here and my left E here, and go back and forth without breaking the sound. Okay? So I had a few little wobbles in there, but let's go back up into the throat tones. Don't lose finger control. It's your fingers are flying off too early is what happens when you lose finger control. And when the fingers start faltering, then your air is going to start faltering too, and now there's the possibility of a total breakdown. So another long time suggestion of mine is slow practice. Slow practice to really nail down your mechanics. Even finger motion. One of the hardest things on a clarinet, since we finger the instrument differently, we go up and down with a lot of, all of our tone holes, we're going basically up and down. Very simple and very clean. It's a very clean motion, okay? And a lot of our fingers, we just go up and down. But when we have lateral fingerings, like our G sharp, that's a lateral. Our D sharp down here in the low range, that's a lateral motion, okay? And then there's the very different A key. All right. And all of these finger motions need to be equal. They have to have equal strength. And then there's the B flat. And we're going to play, as clarinet players, we play thousands of B flats. Gads. I'd love to have a nickel for every B flat I play. Okay, so that's one of the challenges. Maintain key contact and keep your air behind and going through the note connections.
Yeah, I think that's a good place to leave it. We've run out of time here, but I want to encourage you, if you have questions, to reach out to our enthusiast committee members. I'm going to place the email in the chat, but you can also use the website to find the information. Any contact that you see on the website would be more than happy to answer questions for you or help you along your clarinet journey.